Are we recording? I think so. Yes. Okay, we're recording. Thank you. Awesome. Good to know. Thanks, class, for keeping me aligned. Okay, perfect. Mhm. We will pull down this chat box. Awesome, awesome. Okay, friends. Well, 2025 was humanity's report card year. Some ancient Tibetan prophecies that were translated in the 1800s by theosophical philosophers like Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey are now proving to be true. These prophecies proving to be true include things like virtual realities, genetic engineering, transhumanism, telepathy, repercussions of ecocide, genetic engineering, and economic and political collapse, prompting the necessity of a new race of superhuman. It's very interesting because the texts said that in 2025, there would be a conclave, an unseen council of spiritual masters who would review our species and set a new direction for civilization. In an old notebook from last year, I made a note about what was said in the conclave. Alleged meeting every 100 years of the great spiritual masters who determine how best to advance humanity. They precipitate new thought forms in civilization. It is said that after the year 2025, a new master will appear on Earth in the industry of science or education and as a world teacher. It is also said that we currently have only two-thirds of the ancient ageless wisdom accessible to us, and that after the year 2025, a new disciple will emerge to write the final one-third of wisdom that we need to know. Lastly, the principle of sharing will finally emerge in the age of Aquarius. Well, it's pretty obvious that the year 2025 is over. That meeting has already happened, quietly, untelevised, and you didn't hear about it, but I bet you felt it. Bizarre dreams, a sense of disorientation about where society is going, maybe sudden endings in your life, and an unusual sense that everything seems to be shifting. 2025 completed what is called the Age of the Forerunner, according to these theosophical texts. It's an 80-year period that was set for 1945 to 2025, an era of global rebuilding after we nearly annihilated ourselves at the end of World War II, and a preparation period for what was said to be a new and enlightened era. But that prophecy text mentions three benchmarks that needed to be reached by 2025 if the destruction of mankind was going to be averted. Number one, the recognition of spirit within all forms of matter. Number two, the recognition of the fact of God immanent. And number three, the recognition of the existence of a spiritual hierarchy and a divine plan. Depending on the quality of our spiritual graduation by 2025, 2026 onwards would either auto bump us into a more etheric reality or accelerate us downwards towards destruction at the rate of our own current technological innovations that might be lacking spiritual ethics. That it would be very similar to the fall of the now submerged civilization Atlantis, that of course spawned the Great Flood theory of biblical legend. So the biggest question that we're dealing with at the beginning of 2026 is, how well did we do last year? Did we graduate? And is humanity destined to rise or fall? So, hello, my friends, and welcome to the 2026 FUTURECAST Year of the Fire Horse. I'm your host, executive astrologer, and life coach, Moriel Loren. And in this briefing today, we will cover the geocosmic alignments affecting human consciousness, the global economy, social trends, and your personal growth for the year ahead. Now, most of you know that I have an uncanny knack for finding very obscure ancient texts, historical prophecies, frontier of science research, and off the beaten path type of economic information. The good stuff, as I like to say. And my annual predictions include a lot more than just the generic planetary transits other astrologers are already posting about on YouTube and TikTok. And this briefing today for 2026 is going to be great. Further information about all of my research, my upcoming classes, and of course, booking your private session is available on my website, livesymbolic.com. So with this in mind, I am ready to dive in if you are. Now, let's go back to the ancient prophecies. And for that, I want to share my screen. All right, let's go to share. Okay, I hope we can see the screen. Good. The next prophecy to be aware of. And man will create machines that think for them but lack compassion. These mechanical demons will enslave their creators, for they know nothing of love, justice, or mercy. The West worships its machines but starves its soul. Materialism is the true original sin, a veil that blinds humanity to its divine nature. True evolution is in the awakening of divine consciousness within matter. The karma of ecocide will haunt humanity for eons. Earth is a living entity. To wound her is to wound the divine. Rivers will choke on the fields of greed. Forests will crumble to feed furnaces. And the air itself will carry the stench of decay. This is the karma of a civilization that worships profit over life. The Shadow Brotherhood will tighten its grip. They will weaponize science and bury the ancient truths. Then, a new humanity will emerge after a period of global crisis, a purification by fire and water. Words will grow obsolete, and someday thought will flash purely from mind to mind. These words were written in 1888, long before AI ever entered our headlines or our consciousness. And these words were written by an 18th century mystic named Helena Blavatsky with a Russian accent who already started to name the war that we would someday face. And Helena Blavatsky is known as there she is. Helena Blavatsky is known as the mother of modern spirituality. And she's a philosopher, occultist, and founder of the Theosophical movement. Back in the 1800s, she warned us about a time when machines would think for us, but not care for us. She said, remember, these mechanical demons will enslave their creators. She saw what Silicon Valley couldn't, that our intelligence without a soul will become tyranny. The technologist Yuval Noah Harari recently delivered a very blistering warning to global leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos, cautioning that advanced algorithms might start to hack human souls. He said, quote, humans are now hackable. Never summon a power that you cannot control. Thankfully, Blavatsky left behind some blueprints for what we should do when the machines finally arrive. Blavatsky said that the real threat to humanity wasn't artificial intelligence. It was something much older, and that is materialism. She called materialism the original sin of the modern world, the moment that we stopped seeing matter as divine and started worshiping it instead. She taught that matter is simply spirit in condensed form, that everything physical is spiritual in disguise. Blavatsky said that in order for humanity to advance itself, it must move beyond its obsession with purely materialism alone and understand that there is a deeper spiritual quality hidden within all forms. Hence the phrase, the kingdom of God is within. It's interesting because over a century later, the Nobel physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who's called the father of quantum mechanics, kept a copy of Blavatsky's favorite book, The Secret Doctrine, on his desk. So, what else did Blavatsky actually understand about the reality of the universe that science is only now catching up to? Blavatsky didn't talk about just climate change. She spoke of planetary karma. She warned that when a civilization severs its spiritual contract with Earth, that the Earth doesn't just suffer, but it responds. To wound her is to wound the divine. She foresaw our rivers choking on greed and our forests collapsing, and she called it the karma of ecocide. Candidly, it reads like a forecast that we see almost every day in our headlines. Blavatsky taught further that humanity evolves through 7 root races, not just biological stages, but actual spiritual and consciousness-based stages. She said that each race develops new capacities of consciousness, and the 5th root race, that's us. She said that we would be the era of intellect, technology, and individual achievement. But she warned that when intellect dominates the spirit, the mind becomes a tyrant, and the race will begin to collapse under the weight of its own cleverness. Blavatsky called our race the golden age of brilliance and a dark age of wisdom. She predicted the fall of the smartest people on earth. Ours will be the root race that builds empires and machines, but has forgotten its soul in the process. And now, I think we all kind of sense that the fall has begun. The chaos that we're living through now is actually a prophesized expiration date of a spiritual cycle, and it has a name, the Kali Yuga. Blavatsky said it would be a dark age of truth when wisdom is mocked, illusion becomes the law, and systems will rise that reward soullessness over the sacred. But she didn't tell us to run. She told us to remember. Because on the other side of what we're currently experiencing as a collapse would be an emergence. Blavatsky said that after the collapse, a new humanity would rise. In her book, The Secret Doctrine, she said it would emerge after a period of purification by water and fire. She called us what we're emerging into the 6th root race, a people who would possess extrasensory perception, communicate via intuition, have lighter, more etheric bodies, who would be interconnected to all kingdoms of nature, would also be interconnected to other beings around the universe, and would combine nature with technology to improve our planetary ecosystem. She said the key for the 6th root race would be their ability to recognize the inner divinity in all forms. And the job of the 6th root race would be to restore balance between the mind and spirit and become the blueprint for a post-material world. It's very interesting because, of course, the futuristic movie series directed by James Cameron called Avatar, after being the largest grossing box office hit in all history, released a sequel called The Way of the Water, and most recently, in December of 2025, a 3rd movie called Fire and Ash. I think it's interesting how Hollywood always has those hidden messages for us. Because maybe just like Blavatsky said, and James Cameron knows, a new humanity will emerge after a purification by fire and water. So Blavatsky said, furthermore, that time was not a straight line, but that it was a spiral of looping karma and recurrence and evolution, that we don't move forward through time, we move through time. And that the same lessons will keep arriving for us individually and as a species in new disguises until we're conscious enough to respond differently when the repeated lessons emerge. Now, this does align with astrology because astrology teaches that time moves in circles or in cycles as the planets orbit each other. Blavatsky pointed to astrology as key to understanding evolutionary consciousness, a way to track where we are in the spiral. Even the Vatican, which has traditionally used demonized astrology, we could say, has actually built a telescope so that they can observe the stars and try to learn their secret meanings. So if you think astrology is optional, then you probably might not survive what's coming. And as we step into this emerging time period, you'll need to know. Let me. And before I share my screen again. Our screen is not sharing. Thank you for letting me know, Tova. Okay. Let's see. Come on, screen. Come on, screen. That's okay, screen. Furthermore, we shall say that Blavatsky really criticized religion. She saw religion as a form of dogma used by institutions to pursue control rather than divine revelation. And she encouraged people to seek their own form of direct experience with God without intermediaries. And she said that the idea of formalized religion would eventually lose its popularity. Now, it's interesting because the Pew Research Foundation reports that 30% of Americans now identify as spiritual but not religious. And even scientists like Carl Sagan are echoing Blavatsky's call for a more spiritualized approach to science. Now, Blavatsky also predicted a time when words would grow obsolete and thoughts would flash easily from one mind to the other. Today, our technology prophets are calling this neural interfacing. But of course, Blavatsky wasn't talking about cables, she was talking about consciousness evolution. And so even though billionaires like Elon Musk are building machines like his company called Neuralink to try to bridge our minds together through microchips, Blavatsky was suggesting that the next evolutionaries will do it telepathically and energetically. But here's what Blavatsky didn't say outright, but I think most of us already feel, which is that not everyone will make the leap to this new way of thinking and being. Blavatsky warned that if spiritual values were ignored, our aptitudes with technology and lack of innovation ethics would cause us to fall just like the civilization before, Atlantis. So we're already starting to watch humanity try to merge with the machine and trying to crown the algorithm as our new god. So the question isn't, will it happen, but really, will we awaken in time to choose something else? Now, in her final years, Blavatsky claimed to have received very dire warnings from spiritual masters about an upcoming cosmic crisis. And in an 1889 letter, she said, the Shadow Brotherhood will tighten its grip. They will weaponize science, turning brothers against brothers, and bury the ancient truths. And Blavatsky did predict 3 critical threats. Number 1, psychological manipulation. Number 2, genetic engineering. And number 3, virtual realities. So now here we are with AI rewiring the human mind and engineered biology, allowing us to make our own engineered babies and shape the next generation. And reality itself is becoming augmented by those glasses, those cameras that can change the way you see everything. So Blavatsky's prophecy seems to be reading more and more and more like an actual news headline. But don't worry, Blavatsky did not end her prophecy with a horrific apocalypse per se. Blavatsky did leave us with a counterforce, a way for us to remember who we were before the programming. And so Blavatsky said there were three keys to escaping collapse and jumping to the next most ascended timeline. Number one, reject materialism. Number two, revive ancient wisdom. And number three, cultivate inner divinity. So now, in this age of AI and engineered weather and a loss of meaning, this formula has become our new survival code. Because it's pretty clear that the future will not belong to people who are just the most materially successful. The future will belong to the people that are also the most spiritually precise. Now, let me share my screen. Actually, let's do, I'm gonna pull this up. Canva, we would love your feedback. Your feedback sucks with screen sharing. We'll see if this is more helpful for us. Okay. And let's take a look. Perfect. We love that. Okay. So Blavatsky had mentioned the end of the fifth root race and, of course, the emergence of the sixth root race. Blavatsky said the way we would know the transition is occurring is because we would see that there would be this end of pure materialism and mentalism, and that the sixth race would show these signs of like heightened sensory perception. Well, recently, mystics like Richard Rudd have taken it a step even further. Rudd has named 2026 the year of the closing door, a final year before a genetic mutation predicted for next year, 2027, is said to awaken a dominant frequency within the human DNA that expands our consciousness. Now, if you think that's wild, you have to recognize that over 98% of our DNA currently remains unexplained by scientists. Yeah, that means 90% of what's inside of us, they just say, we have no idea what it does. So they simply term it junk DNA. It's a very clever way for science to say we just simply have no clue. So perhaps the secret of what Richard Rudd is referring to resides in there. He said 26 is going to close the door on this old template, and 27 would activate this new genetic code within us. So that means right now in 2026, we're at a bifurcation in our timeline. 2026, as this year of the closing door, is a final checkpoint before reality really splits in two. One path would, of course, accelerate our growth into sacred embodiment, and the other path would lead to confusion and collapse. So we all have to choose our timeline now. And this idea of a new superhuman of the sixth root race isn't just so much a sci-fi fantasy as it is maybe an actual frequency that is starting to express through us at a cellular level. And so those of us who are already would say, maybe I'm too sensitive, maybe I'm too different, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe actually it's something inside of us, for those who are ready, that is literally cellularly waking up. So if you have felt like 2025, the year of the snake, maybe was some kind of breakdown, maybe big endings or a troublesome time, and that you're having strange wonderings and wanderings going on inside of you, maybe these aren't actual breakdowns, but breakthroughs. And maybe some of these are activations and early signals of what Richard Rudd was talking about. Cool. Now, the question is in 2026, are we finally in a time cycle where we can up level our consciousness? It's really interesting going back to the Alice Bailey text. She says that 2026 onwards would be a period called the externalization of the hierarchy. According to the Theosophical text, this 2026 onward period could be a time when humanity will elevate above mentalism and materialism into intuition and interdimensionalism. It says that this foregoing period of society would be a time when spirituality and actually magic would be studied scientifically. And therefore, spirituality and magic would finally be understood as congruent and not conflicting. It is also said that a new form of world energy will be discovered that equalizes and transforms the economy, and that humanity will become aware of other interplanetary intelligences, and that spiritual masters who were once previously invisible to the naked eye will actually become manifest on the physical plane because finally our physical capabilities and faculties will become advanced enough to be able to see them and recognize them. Alice Bailey wrote, quote, "This is the most amazing period in the history of humanity. We are entering another great round of the zodiac, Aquarius, which governs a larger cycle of 25,000 years, a precession of the equinox. It's a cycle wherein, for the first time, three major centers, heaven, the spiritual masters, and humanities, are in direct and unimpeded relation. For today, the alignment is correct and adjusted for the first time in planetary history. Something is being initiated, the effects of which will never be lost. We are also establishing extraplanetary relationships that will eventually create a situation where planet Earth can become a sacred planet. In this era, we will see the restoration of the ancient mysteries, and when restored, they will unify all people and all faiths." So it's really amazing that Blavatsky and Bailey were writing things back in the 1880s and 1919, and it all looks like it's coming true today. Well, enter 2026, the year of the fire horse, and numerology universal year number one. So this universal year number one in numerology, and of course in Chinese astrology, that first lunation, the first new moon of the new year being in the fire horse energy, this is really all about the spark of primal initiation, right? When something is actually birthing, of emergence, of momentum, of being able to move forward, of leadership, and of truly breeding something that is entirely new. So the question now will be, what exactly is going to be birthed and what do we want to create? So for these answers, we will look to the astrological stars, just as Blavatsky, the mother of modern spirituality, would have wanted us to. And 2026 does carry a series of astrological alignments that are unquestionably going to bring us over the brink of unknown frontiers. So now let's dive into that cosmic cartography that the sky reveals for the year ahead. The first thing to explore is the placement of Pluto in Aquarius. You are definitely waking up to a world that is being programmed in real time, because Pluto is the planetary symbol of death and power and irreversible transformation. And it's entered Aquarius, which is the constellation ruling science, innovation, rebellion, and collective identity. When you put that together, you get basically a planetary test to decide which parts of humanity get to survive. So Pluto's entry into Aquarius from 2024, 2 years ago, to 2044, that makes a total of a 20-year period, is calling forth a sense of a battle for humanity. And I don't just mean in terms of power or policy, I literally mean in terms of our essence. What will we define as human? We're entering this age of AI governance and consciousness transfer and synthetic biology and collective systems that are being designed to control our identities at a large scale. You may feel like the tools that you used to trust are now tracking you, and the systems that you built your life or your business on are completely mutating. We will expect during this 20-year period to see these revolutions in technology and uprisings against institutions that minimize individual human freedom, and a rise of quantum breakthroughs that will collapse everything that we previously defined as real. An old empire. We'll let in another one. We will feel like this old empire is going away, and the future is truly being coded for us right now. So a question for you to think about is, do you want to be uploaded or do you want to be awakened? Because the next 20 years of Pluto's placement in Aquarius will determine whether you evolve with a soul or whether you disappear inside of a simulation. Ancient Hindu texts talk about something called the Dwapara Yuga, a time cycle where humanity will begin to awaken to the true nature of energy, both physical energy and spiritual energy. This Dwapara Yuga is said to be marked by rapid scientific advances and psychic breakthroughs, including the collapse of space-time as a limitation. This era aligns uncannily with Pluto's 20-year journey through Aquarius. Things like telepathy, remote viewing, free energy, and instantaneous travel could actually leave science fiction and become real. We're already seeing things around space-time travel, like witnessed by the extraterrestrial spacecraft Tic Tac phenomenon recorded by the US Navy. We might be right now at the very crux of what Blavatsky warned of, the split between the fifth and the sixth races, a transition from that Kali Yuga of materialism to the Dwapara Yuga of awakening. The biggest thing to realize now in 2026 is maybe that the bifurcation or split in the timeline is already underway. Now, beyond our own borders, outer space is fast becoming the new real estate. And in many ways, this is super appropriate for our growth. But we should recognize that this is going to change the way we define our sense of identity, and even what we think is important to us. Because it's time that we finally relate to the universe around us instead of mythologizing ourselves as only being central and exclusive to the universe. Humanity is going to have to become an intergalactic species. And enter the aliens. Now, if you think this is a joke, you should know that US President Trump signed into law a new branch of the military called the Space Force to prepare us. This is the first new branch of the military that's been created in 73 years, with the last being the Air Force in 1947. Interestingly, this Space Force's personnel are titled guardians instead of officers. The former Israeli Space Security Chief Chaim Ashed says that US President Trump actually has an agreement with the aliens to not yet reveal the extraterrestrial relationships until, quote, humanity reaches a stage where we understand what space really is.
President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are. NBC News chief global correspondent Bill Neely explains this one.
Hi, Alison. Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years, not immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims, but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria. Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready and the aliens don't want to reveal themselves until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is. Well, the good news is that he claims an agreement has been reached between the US government and the aliens, a contract to do experiments here. There's also, he says, a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected, at least until now. And he said all this in an interview with an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, but it's really taken off after parts of it were published in English by the Jerusalem Post today. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose. Well, so far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago, he did set up the Space Force as the fifth branch of the US Armed Forces. Well, we did ask the White House, the Department of Defense, and Israeli officials to comment. So far, they have not responded to the NBC News request, and I wonder if they ever will.
Very interesting. I guess we'll have to see what happens next there. Let me check the chat. Hello. Oh, good. Yeah. Our screen sharing was finally working. And yes, Jessica, junk DNA. God, scientists, for being such brilliant people with PhDs, I have to admit sometimes they just come up with the dumbest names for things, the Big Bang, the junk DNA, the leap year. Gosh, when we don't know how to explain something, we just come up with a silly name for it, don't we? Okay, so let's go take a look now at this. Share my screen. Boop. Perfect. So another aspect of Pluto in Aquarius is based on the necessity of us becoming an intergalactic species, and candidly, it looks like at this point the inevitability, and certainly the US administration, Israeli administration, and probably many other political administrations are already on board with whatever's going on behind the scenes. It should be pretty apparent that astrology is no longer optional, meaning if you don't understand it, then you might not survive what's coming next. Because as we step into this rise of becoming an intergalactic species, astrology is not going to just be a spiritual hobby. It's going to be really a survival technology for us to know how to use, because these charts of outer space are not only symbolic, they are cosmic coordinates, they are like energetic passports, and they are our keys to accessing and understanding quantum energy and consciousness and multidimensional realms of space. So over the next 20 years, while Pluto is in Aquarius, those who can learn how to read the stars are going to be at the forefront of navigating the future. And everybody else, well, they'll be left behind to be programmed by it. So let's take a look at this.
Astrology
millionaires use science. And there's a reason why.
This is very funny.
Because the billionaires know the truth.
I think what people need to understand is that this is not magic. This is not sorcery. This is
science.
Science.
It's more scientific than the science we use.
Sometimes it has a bit of a poetic veneer. The planet is this and that. But at the end, it's energy, it's frequency, it's what happened as above, so below. All of this is very connected. So when we understand at least a small part of it, it can bring a huge change in our lives.
I say it all the time. It is the original science. Billionaires use astrology.
Well, thank goodness we're all in astrology class today. It'll keep us ahead of things. Furthermore, atomic energy, a source of this universal power that hasn't really been fully explored yet. So in 1922, theosophical texts written by Alice Bailey, like the one pictured here, The Consciousness of the Atom, predicted back in 1922 that actually the atom would be split. And sure enough, as we all know, 2 decades later, Hiroshima proved that prophecy to be right. But the prophecy didn't end there. It said that the hydrogen bomb would be just the beginning and that there's actually 5 different types of atoms that remain yet undiscovered. But that when we discover these 5 other types of atoms, that it will actually release new forms of energy and collapse our current understanding of physics, meaning what we think is accurate according to physics right now is pretty limited. And that this understanding of these 5 types of atoms would also help us understand telepathy and how to expand time, space, dimensions, and that would be the secret key to unlocking the ability for interdimensional travel and altering time, space. Furthermore, it said that this discovery of the 5 different types of atoms would lead to eventually us understanding that there is a form of energy in the earth, in the ether that we haven't released yet that is actually powerful enough for us to fuel the entire planet and likely for free. Now, doesn't that remind us of exactly what scientist Nikola Tesla said many years ago and he was working on right before he conveniently died? So Tesla knew that it was hidden in there. Blavatsky knew that it was hidden in there. Bailey knew that it was hidden in there. But of course, our current systems have chosen to bury it. But nothing stays buried for long. So the question isn't if we are going to find the secrets of the atom, but who is going to control those secrets when we do find them. Now, also, Pluto in Aquarius will bring this knowledge of alternate dimensions, proving through science what the mystics have always known. Most recently, a few days ago, here in January 2026, physicists confirmed what mystics, astrologers, and the ancients have been saying for years, which is that we do not live in a closed system. A hidden 5th dimension that is unseen but soon becoming measurable actually appears to be subtly influencing our experience of gravity, time, and even the structure of galaxies. So particles are being tracked as they're apparently leaking from this unseen but measurable 5th dimension and leaking and trickling down into the 3rd dimension, which is where we apparently are. And as this leaking of the particles from the 5th dimension down to the 3rd dimension is happening, it's creating what scientists are calling portals. Now, they are also recognizing that time itself is not actually singular or linear, that it's multidimensional and spiral coded. Of course, this is what astrology has always taught, the idea that time moves in circles as the planets are going in a circular orbit. Hence the phrase, history always repeats itself. But according to the most recent science, we can see that these pop spirituality catchphrases like the 3D, the 5D, portals are not actually just pop language, but are now becoming scientifically verifiable. So it looks like more than just the veil is thinning, but actually perhaps it's opening. Yes, our dear friend Elon Musk. Another aspect of Pluto in Aquarius, the quest for immortality. Maybe even in some ways the final hijack of the human soul. Now, Elon Musk, the world's richest innovator, has recently said that he believes death is optional, that human beings are simply pre-programmed to expire, and that with the right scientific intervention, immortality could actually be solvable. Through genetic reprogramming and brain chip interfaces like his product Neuralink, he plans to extract consciousness, our memories, our voice, and upload it into the cloud like a file. So imagine the experience of your soul, your most precious memories, your knowledge skill sets, and your most intimate secrets being reduced to data. Your life turned into software and inserted into anything or anyone. Maybe the future that's coming doesn't want to kill you. It wants to copy you. AI is probably the most seductive and controversial technology that the whole energy of Pluto in Aquarius will explore. And maybe it is our deepest existential exploration as well. Elon Musk has recently said work and money will likely be irrelevant in 20 years, which is interesting because that's the exact same time frame of Pluto in Aquarius, 20 years. And this isn't just clickbait. This is a blueprint, maybe. As AI starts to replace your skills, your systems, and your monetization models, the question is what happens to your meaning? If your job, your brand, and your income possibly become obsolete by 2044, then what exactly will you be doing here? By the way, on the spring equinox, I am going to be teaching our next class about this very topic. The class is called The Future of Money, and we will be talking about the collapse of currency, the rise of new types of economies, and what will come after work. So stay tuned in our thread for the announcement of that class. And I see some chats going on here, so let me take a quick look. Okay, we love that. Thank you. Yes, Charles. What are we doing here? Yes, Dr. Dan, absolutely pursue their passions. You and I have talked about that a lot in our sessions. And you're a great example of somebody who's doing that. Yeah. Charles, what are we doing here? There's nowhere to go and no one to lead. What are we really? Thanks. Yeah. Good job, guys. Now, Pluto in Aquarius will not really just test our ability to innovate or to invent. Pluto in Aquarius is actually about the test of who we become once we do. AI, aliens, atomic energy, robotics, the real threat is not the technology. It's the hands that hold the keys. Innovation is neutral. Innovation is just innovation, but its consequences are never random. A knife can prepare a meal for dinner just as much as it can kill somebody. It all depends on who's holding it and why. So you need to ask yourself, who do you trust to steward this incredible power to split atoms and clone minds and build a thinking machine? Because for the first time in history, we have created a creator. a self-evolving intelligence that is no longer reliant on us to push its button. Soon, AI will merge completely with robotics, meaning it will have a body, it will walk, it will talk, it will be among us, and it will decide. And what it decides is probably going to mirror what we have chosen to value. Geoffrey Hinton recently received the Nobel Peace Prize for inventing AI. He's popularly known as the godfather of AI. And during his acceptance speech, I thought it was really interesting what he chose to say. And actually, I think that's the wrong link. So we're going to open this link.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen. This year, the Nobel Committees in Physics and Chemistry have recognized the dramatic progress being made in a new form of artificial intelligence that uses artificial neural networks to learn how to solve difficult computational problems. This new form of AI excels at modeling human intuition rather than human reasoning, and it will enable us to create highly intelligent and knowledgeable assistants who will increase productivity in almost all industries. If the benefits of the increased productivity can be shared equally, it will be a wonderful advance for all humanity. Unfortunately, the rapid progress in AI comes with many short-term risks. It has already created divisive echo chambers by offering people content that makes them indignant. It is already being used by authoritarian governments for massive surveillance and by cybercriminals for phishing attacks. In the near future, AI may be used to create terrible new viruses and horrendous lethal weapons that decide by themselves who to kill or maim. All of these short-term risks require urgent and forceful attention from governments and international organizations. There is also a longer-term existential threat that will arise when we create digital beings that are more intelligent than ourselves. We have no idea whether we can stay in control, but we now have evidence that if they are created by companies motivated by short-term profits, our safety will not be the top priority. We urgently need research on how to prevent these new beings from wanting to take control. They are no longer science fiction. Thank you.
Hinton's words remind me of what technologist Yuval Harari warned, quote, "Never create a power that you cannot control." And it also takes me back to 1888, when Blavatsky warned us, "Man will create machines that think for them, but lack compassion. These mechanical demons will enslave their creators, for they know nothing of love, justice, or mercy." We didn't just make a machine, we made a mirror of ourselves. And so the question is, what or who is looking back? This Pluto in Aquarius era from 2024 to 2044 will open with a 7-year pressure cooker as the planet Uranus goes through Gemini from 2025 to 2032 within that larger timescape. The presence of Uranus and Gemini is going to accelerate this digitization, communication, and collapse of our more outdated mental grids. But the real ignition point is coming here in July 2026, when Jupiter enters Leo, the lunar nodes shift into Leo and Aquarius, and there is a very specific 10-day hotspot from July 15th to July 25th of this year, where we are going to be absolutely flooded with a peak of these Pluto and Aquarius themes very much innovation shocks, and for ourselves, these personal destiny leaps about how we are going to move into the future. This time in July is when we will experience accelerated evolution, and that timeline split is going to become even more and more real. Now, you are probably already feeling it. I know many of you, myself included, have been feeling it since 2025, the year of the snake. There was a lot of discomfort this past year in 2025, and the feeling like something has got to give, right? So you might be feeling actually a sense of numbness about how you want to move forward. Do I really want to scale my business? Do I really want to go do some big thing? Maybe a resistance to a lot of things that you used to love, and a pull to go within yourself to a space that is deeper and quieter and, dare I say, even weirder, but not really sure where it's going to lead. My offering to you to consider is that you're not resisting progress. Maybe what's happening is you are now rejecting the feeling of disembodiment or misalignment. I think that the threat of what's coming in the future is really not the machine, but it's an internal override if you doubt your own knowing about where you want to be in the future. So let's ask some dangerous questions. What if your smartest strategies have actually just been more like simulations in somebody else's pre-rigged reality? And what if what you've mastered as success in the world is success inside a system that your soul actually is here to now dismantle? What if you are here to dismantle the system? Pluto in Aquarius is not going to let you fake it, not with your deep divine mission, your message, your identity. It wants you to remember who you are before you got absorbed by the algorithm. Because some of us didn't come here to just get rich. We came here to recode reality itself, to restore soul into this system. So if you've been feeling like a misfit lately, if your intuition is screaming at something, and if your body is saying it's time, but your brain doesn't yet have a plan, then you are on the precipice of cosmic readiness. And this is a time when logical strategy alone is not just what you need. You need a real sense of cosmic precision. And that is what we do in our individual one-on-one FUTURECAST sessions, where we look at your personal astrology chart and your time frames for the year ahead so we can get your exact soul map that is encoded for this split in the timeline. We can get a sense of the real identity that you have been meant to embody and the instructions that you came into this lifetime with about how you are here to help recode reality, because this reality will be recoded from the depth of the human soul, not just from mechanical systems. Now, let's take a look at our next major astrological transit. So for the first time since the Civil War, Neptune, which is our planetary director of spirituality and healing and intuition, is entering Aries, which is the constellation of individuality, self-reliance, and rebellion. Now, Neptune is going to hang out there for 14 years until 2039. And this 14-year period is about the rise of God as a direct experience and not religious dogma. So we'll expect to see a surge in this idea of personal creativity and entrepreneurship, custom tailored healthcare, and holistic healing. the need for innovation across all kinds of previously unexplored frontiers like AI, like outer space, like atomic energy. And we will also see a lot of fiery clashes. Neptune is joined by Saturn in Aries, so this is volcanoes and solar flares, but also fiery clashes on a societal level, like wars and uprisings against governmental systems that are suppressing individual sovereignty. The energy of Neptune in Aries is really saying to us, no longer outsource your power and your identity. You are the system that you will rely on. So let us not waste our time. Something is truly about to detonate. And evolution always demands death because every growing seed has to break its container in order to sprout. And now that we are past this prophetic turning point of the 2025 conclave, humanity does have to break its container in order for our consciousness to sprout. So if you've been feeling like there's pressure building, then you're actually quite a bit on schedule. And let me check the chat real quick. Boop, perfect. Love that. So this pressure building, right, that's letting us know we're moving quite on schedule, no matter how uncomfortable it is, towards something significant, is the fact that coming up on February 20th, these two planetary giants, Neptune and Saturn, are going to be colliding at the 0 mark of Aries. This is the very beginning of the zodiac. Pull this up. So this is the very beginning of the zodiac, and this to me feels like the jump off point to the timeline shift that we've been talking about. It is really where our soul collides with the system, and whatever container that you have been surviving in so far will probably not survive this ignition. The 0 point energy is absolutely about initiation. And so this scheduled detonation of our outdated realities makes us say we have to be super conscious about what we're building and what's coming next. So if you have been feeling that sense of there's an urgency that I can't name, and there's some kind of readiness that I can't explain, like I'm waiting to receive some kind of assignment because I can't stay where I am, but I'm not exactly sure where I'm going, then this may be the moment around February 20th when your soul starts to feel like it is freeing itself from the container that has become too small for it. Your decision about how you will move forward after February 20th has to be self-initiated. The circumstances will prompt you, but listen deeply within yourself for the clues about what needs to change in your life and what is the sense of personal mission that you are trying to bring forth in this new version of reality. Now, let's explore another transit. February 20th, yes. Yes, Amanda. How do you define 0 point detonation? Neptune and Saturn will be aligned mathematically at a perfect 0 degree conjunction in the constellation of Aries. So that's that 0 point, like detonation, explosive, two things merging together, right? And pushing a new energy forth. And yes, Amanda, February 20th. Yep. Actually, the 72 hours from February 17th to February 20th, to me, really feel like that jump off point, because February 17th is the Lunar New Year for the year of the fire horse. And then 72 hours later on February 20th, that is when the detonation point of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happens. So to me, this is like a hotspot, right? When a lot of the themes and the things we're talking about, like when is that going to start going this year? I think it's happening, kicking off for us in that 72-hour period. So I hope that helps. Yeah, February 17th is also the solar eclipse. That's correct. Yeah, so the Lunar New Year is extra explosive and hopefully in wonderful ways for all of us on this call because we're also having a solar eclipse on that same date. So, yep, that's 72 hours. Super, super, super big deal. Okay, let me share my screen and let's take a look at the next thing happening. The golden cage. Let's explore the golden cage. Okay. We are coming into the start of 2026 with a very important leftover from 2025, and we've got it all the way till the middle of the summer, till approximately July. It's interesting how July keeps coming up, right? We talk about the month of July again and again as being really significant. So one of the themes that we're currently in, and we've been in it for the past 6 months, that second half of 2025, is the placement of Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer brings up themes around survival needs, safety, and our sense of tribe. So what have we been seeing in the headlines and maybe honestly personally been feeling and worried about? This brings up worries around the rising cost of living and affording basic necessities, like can I afford my lifestyle? Physical safety when the political climate is feeling really divided and reactive and on the verge of conflict. Like, is it safe for me to simply be as I am, or is it safe to me to express my viewpoints? Housing is becoming quite expensive. So a lot of people are wondering where is the right location to make my dreams come true. People are becoming super aware of food being poisoned by big pharma and thinking, how do I take care of my body and the environment? And we might be feeling the decline of nurturance-based values that support families and women and children. So a lot of people thinking, what will the future look like for my children or loved ones? And some people are thinking, should I even have children? Now, what are the social stress indicators? Hello, somebody, can you put yourself on mute? Love that. So the social stress indicators that are showing this Jupiter in Cancer transit, massive inflation, and the US dollar had its lowest trade point in over 50 years. Reports are now saying that $136,000 is the new poverty line in America, and that the American dream of retiring savings is now increased to anywhere between $2 million to $5 million in order to just live comfortably, whereas, of course, previously the American dream of retirement was $1 million. And we're seeing a lot of housing become so unaffordable, and big banks and private organizations like BlackRock are actually buying up a lot of real estate, which makes personal home ownership even harder. A lot of citizens are actually getting backup visas in other countries just in case they have to flee. And of course, very recently, the government organization called ICE has been all over the news for throwing out citizens who lack proper paperwork, but quite frankly, they just look more like the Nazi Gestapo. And how could we forget Bill Gates buying up most of US farmland so that he can control the food supply? And we're seeing a ton of children's and women's rights violations come to our attention, such as Epstein Island and the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, it is not all terrible with Jupiter in Cancer because there are some positive progress indicators that we can see. We definitely have noticed the emergence of what we call a sharing economy. Things for communal use, gifting, barter and exchanges, the rise of thrifting, like a very popular website called ThreadUp. We're also seeing the rise of communal living and new forms of eco-friendly housing, like geodomes and repurposed shipping containers as houses. Lots of people are turning to homesteading and regenerative farming to take care of their bodies and the land. And thankfully, new laws around femicide are actually making gender-based violence punishable by law in countries like Italy, Spain, Belgium. So Jupiter in Cancer is pushing the limits on when the things we thought would previously protect us have maybe become a prison. Jupiter's move into Cancer, which is the zodiac's mother archetype, is really stimulating our most primal survival-based fears, asking us, am I safe? Is what I built still enough? And can I keep living this way? Mainstream pop astrology, if you scroll through Instagram and TikTok right now, is going to give you a lot of posts about how Jupiter in Cancer is the call to nurture and comfort. But I disagree, because I think that when Jupiter expands Cancerian themes, it does not wrap you in safety. It tests your definition of it. And most of what you've called safe might now be the thing keeping you stuck. Or worse, it could actually be putting you in danger. Can I afford my lifestyle? Can I afford that same lifestyle 2 years from now? Where is the actual location that aligns with my next chapter? And how do I know and go there before maybe it's too late and I miss my mark? Should I be preparing for geopolitical collapse, climate collapse, or spiritual collapse? And you might be thinking, why is it so weird that I feel like I'm being spiritually summoned, but also economically strangled at the same time? So Jupiter in Cancer might be exposing the fact that your comfort zone has now become your golden cage. And maybe you have outgrown a version of security that you've spent years building. And now you might feel like you're locked out of your actual life and real mission. So even though you're still showing up every day, there might be a voice that has slowly started to recognize over the past year or so something along the lines of, none of this protects me from what's coming next. So let's talk about what's actually being exposed. The lie that money equals safety. Wealth itself is being redefined right before our eyes. The illusion that home is a place. When you might be kicked out of anywhere you go, you discover that it's also a frequency inside of yourself. And that you might be stuck in the trap of being a person who has built something really impressive, but now feels like you have to leave it behind. Jupiter in Cancer will not coddle you. It wants to liberate you from your outdated ideas of security and from places in your life where you have overperformed but no longer believe in. And it wants to free you from the pressure of trying to hold together something that your soul is already ready to evolve past. So I invite you to consider the questions. What if your current home is keeping you from receiving your next divine assignment? And what if your wealth strategy is built on an old system that is already collapsing? So if you've been feeling restless or contracted or emotionally volatile lately, it's not dysfunction within you. It's actually dissonance with the field. And it is your higher self banging on the inside of your life saying, we can't stay here. That's not you failing or falling apart. That is actually your divine assignment waking up. So you might be hearing that drumbeat. Where the hell am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to move to, pivot? And how do I preserve my sense of power while everything else destabilizes? Our next transit. Around July, a big month, we keep talking about July, Jupiter will leave Cancer and shift into the constellation of Leo for 13 months. And this highlights the themes of self and leadership, and even in many ways, creativity. So you may feel initial signs of it now, but it'll really hit you in the summer. Worried about a sense of autonomy, like the power to determine your own destiny. As I'm realizing how many lies that I've been told by institutions I've been taught to trust, how can I protect the authority of my own life? You might be really wanting to follow your personal structure, your personal sense of mission, when a lot of the structures around you that you used to rely on as guaranteed stairways to success aren't working. Guaranteed stairways to success, like corporate jobs, college degrees, home ownership, or traditional savings. What else will you do? You might be thinking, how do I strike out on my own in a system that is failing me to do what I truly want? You'll also be wondering, how do I find personal happiness and meaning in a world that simultaneously feels like it's falling apart and yet also at its technological peak, making anything that I want possible at my fingertips? So what is my real calling? You might feel the need to express your creativity and entrepreneurship and really make something of yourself and make things that make the world a better place as part of your personal contribution to healing the collective. How do you help heal the world and heal yourself? How do you have self-leadership in a world where celebrities and politicians and gurus are being exposed as absolute freaking fakes? How do you become the leader that's worth following? We can see these social stress indicators already showing us some of the signs of Leo. The 2020 pandemic definitely ripped the wool off of our eyes, revealing how many of the seedy superstructures are running our world. And we cannot unsee what we saw. And it raises these doubts about how much our lives are truly being influenced by the greed of the few. Furthermore, AI is creating the largest wealth transfer in human history. Rapid, massive unemployment is going to occur and is already, as AI starts to replace a lot of the old jobs before emerging into new ones. And in that bifurcation, guess what? The middle class is going to be wiped out. So I say, if you're making anywhere between $80,000 and $150,000 right now, you are very likely to be replaced, and you need to be creating your own financial backup plan now. We will see a continued rise of AI manufactured celebrities, pop stars, icons, individuals in the public eye. We already are seeing it. In September of 2025, we saw our first AI generated celebrity pop star named Keon. Keon is an AI pop star who received a $50 million deal from the fashion brand Fendi. And she isn't even real. She's not real. She has no musical talent. She didn't train for years at Juilliard, just the press of a button. And she gets $50 million from a fashion brand. We can see the same thing showing up in politics, also in September of last year. The creation of the world's first legally appointed AI-generated political official wearing a traditional woman's Albanian headdress. Her name is Diela, and she now has an elected seat as the Prime Minister of Albania because their government is testing to see if an AI will make better decisions for the people than the people themselves. But don't lose heart. Jupiter in Leo is also starting already and will more so bring some positive progress indicators. So at the same time that statistics are predicting that the next 5 years are going to create the largest overnight millionaires and overnight billionaires due to the peak of AI and all technological capabilities literally being in the palms of our hands. I think that 2026 might very well be the year of the billionaire creator, because why not? Every individual could create something that they truly love and are passionate about in the blink of an eye. Why wouldn't you be putting something amazing out into the world? Why wouldn't you be creating a multi-income financial ecosystem for yourself? Why wouldn't you be building something? So there's incredibly fantastic opportunities for rapid entrepreneurship. I think that this year, everybody should be a creator. There's never been a better time for you to break away from a traditional corporate job or from having just one form of income to create your own business and to live your purpose and to get paid for being yourself. But all that being said, let's be blunt. You don't trust the system anymore, and frankly, neither do I. Jupiter in Leo is going to oppose that Pluto in Aquarius we spoke about earlier. And that Jupiter-Pluto opposition is a collision between personal power and global control. It is a showdown between our sacred self-expression and the forces that are going to try to shape the future for us to benefit them. So you might be realizing now that you are in a reality that the rules you once followed won you respect, but they won you respect in a game that you didn't know was somebody else's game and that you didn't realize was pre-rigged for their benefit and not for your resonance. The dollar is currently crumbling and AI is replacing entire industries, and the systems that you were taught to count on, college, career paths, savings, retirement, home ownership, are being economically eviscerated. And so while you have felt successful in the past, you may wonder how you are going to define your own sense of success in the future. Jupiter in Leo wants you to consider the questions. What if you have been building something amazing, but that isn't actually meant for you? This is that shift into spiritual self-leadership, into being a creator, into being an entrepreneur, into getting clarity on your divine mission and making it manifest in the world somehow. And making you wonder, how do you lead in a world that you don't trust so that you can build the one that you do? So I challenge you to consider that maybe what you need is not just a new plan. You need to remember the original plan that you were born with before the system trained you to forget. Don't play their game anymore. Build your own damn arena. You know you're powerful. The how may still feel a little foggy for you. Like, what's the timing? What's my move? What's my plan? It feels like a question mark. And the cost of guessing wrong, the risk of your own destiny. But what I would say is you don't need more ambition. And you don't need another online course or a motivational quote from Instagram. You need a fucking map. And you have one. You were born with it. The map of your life, your birth chart, your natal chart, your astrology chart. That's why it's there. This is such an important time to really understand who you are and what's coming up next in your destiny so that you can make the most of it and so the world around you can also benefit from it. Hello. Now, the next thing. At the end of the year, we will have another significant time period from October 3rd to November 14th. This will be a double retrograde between Venus and Mercury. And I think it's going to bring not so much the rise of the divine feminine, but the fall of the false masculine. This double retrograde is going to turn the spotlight on sexuality and relationships and gender dynamics. And really, it is a slow burn collapse of how we've been doing love, power, and partnership. We will be witnessing the death of outdated gender dynamics and the end of traditional patriarchal dominance. It's interesting because when we talk about the patriarchy, I think that what we are looking at and what we need is really not so much just the rise of the divine feminine, but in a lot of ways, really the rise of the divine masculine. And I think that the patriarchy isn't a reflection of that. I think that the patriarchy is a reflection of uninitiated men. And that maybe we have yet to experience in our civilization the true beauty and power and impact of the actual divine masculine. It's interesting because this uncomfortable fall of the patriarchy, which is the fall of the false masculine, is really going to be exposed during the double retrograde. You know, when we consider the fact that 90% of white married men flood adult content platforms like OnlyFans, and we've got guys like Andrew Tate out there spewing gender hate of women as a requirement to quote unquote man up. And we've got these disembodied incel men turning to things like extreme pornography and AI-generated robot girlfriends. I think the truth is kind of hard to ignore that, like, the issue isn't about femininity rising. The issue is that true masculinity has not yet arrived. And so I don't think the double retrograde is about canceling men. I think the double retrograde is about summoning them as the initiated masculine, the ones who have integrated the feminine, and so they no longer fear her. And this isn't about an ongoing battle of the sexes. It's about the end of the age of uninitiated men. So I think a question for us to consider is, what if humanity's next level of spiritual evolution actually depends on the rise of men? And that maybe a new era for our planet is for the first time experiencing the divine masculine in a way that we never have before. And within our own lives, what if our relationships aren't just craving more romance, but maybe our relationships are really craving more reverence between each other? You know, when I look at the sum total of the year, Pluto in Aquarius, Jupiter moving through Cancer and Leo, this double retrograde, the prophecies of Blavatsky and Bailey, and gene keys, and this talk of a new race of people, and the collapse of an old type of race of people. To me, it's so much more than just astrology. It's something that we can all feel is here. In 2025, that prophecy said that the conclave of masters met secretly and unseen by the public, but felt very deeply by many of us. Your nervous system knew last year that there was some kind of dividing point in the sand. Maybe some relationships or work things really ended for you. Things stopped converting, and the plan that you thought was going to get you where you wanted to go, maybe you discovered it's becoming obsolete in the new environment. And the vote of the conclave was cast. 2026 onward is supposed to be that period of the externalization of the hierarchy. That age of preparation of the forerunner is gone. And this blueprint of the sixth root race is being activated now through me, through you, through all of us. Blavatsky warned us. She said that the fifth root race, the age of intellect, of synthetic control, wouldn't die quietly, that it would cling and it would perform and it would try to monetize our attention, right? And that maybe it would drown itself in its own algorithms that it called optimization. And that it would push all of us to go, if this is success, then why does it feel so misaligned? And maybe we're secretly starting to awaken to the fact that we are done overperforming in systems that we are actually here to dismantle. Because you're not built to fit in. Maybe you were built to transmit this next design. So Pluto in Aquarius has already begun. The machine is learning, the code is running, and the soul is being sidelined. AI, atomic energy, alien disclosure is not just mythology anymore, it's actual logistics for what's happening. The question isn't, oh my God, how do I keep up with all of this? Maybe the question is really, how do you stay gracefully human while the very definition of humanity itself is being rewritten? And so if you've been feeling like maybe your real gifts are ahead of your clarity, like your voice is ready for something, but your path is still a little bit foggy, and that your knowing is loud, but your current or old identity is glitching a bit, then that's actually just your timeline sensitivity, your awareness of what is coming and what is happening, of what is starting already in seed form to move through you. And maybe we're in a time that's finally no longer this battle of the sexes between men and women. Maybe it's not about gender at all, but about integration of all parts of ourselves to wholeness. Maybe we're seeing that our world up until this point with the patriarchy hasn't actually been led by men. It's been led by uninitiated masculinity, disembodied from the feminine, disassociated from nature, and allergic to softness and terrified of its own soul. And that we don't need to choose sides, we just need to integrate ourselves and become whole. So we're standing very soon at this 0-point ignition, this initiation in February and again in July. Our soul is watching. It wants to see if we're going to collapse with the system or ignite the signal that we came here to carry. So if you have been wondering, what the hell is going on with me? Why does everything around me feel like it's dissolving? What is my actual timeline and my real mission? And where do I belong in this split between the 5th race and the 6th race? Then maybe your next move isn't just a plan, but actually a future cast. And so this is what we cover in your one-on-one personalized future cast session, where we look at your divine coordinates, your mission, your destiny timeline, all customized based on your unique birth information. We are going to see what your role is in establishing the 6th root race, that next evolution of yourself. Because in the words of the mother of modern spirituality, Helena Blavatsky, she says, a divine spark resides in everyone. And so this is your moment to remember. You're not just awakening, you're arriving. And the 6th root race is being written through you as we speak. So thank you for joining me here on the 2026 FutureCast Year of the Fire Horse. And I'll see you soon again in our next class in March, and before that in our private FutureCast sessions. May the stars forever align in your favor.
Thank you.